why isn't there an app that everyone knows that puts all your loyalty cards into one place?
Yeah.
It seemed a very obvious kind of big problem.
On this episode, I chat to Mathew Coffey, one of the founders of Squid Loyalty. He chats to us about founding a business at an early age, the mistakes along the way, and the future of Squid Loyalty.
It's definitely strange having it grow from, something that we were initially talking about just after college to, as you were saying, seeing it now. We're now in 1,000 locations across Ireland and the UK. So this was after whatever's got Squid Games, and basically Google just automatically pulled Squid off the App Store. If you're going to be working in an early stage startup, you've got to accept that, what I'm saying, there's basically your job is to write the rule book almost. So we want to get into restaurants, supermarkets, airlines, hotels, e-commerce. We want to get everywhere basically.
Well, Mathew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
You're my first ever guest.
I tell you, yeah, but I'm nervous now. I don't want to make a mess of your first podcast, so a lot of pressure on me to.
This is it. We're making history. Don't worry about it.
We're making history at least, anyway. Yeah, that's true.
This is it. But look, you founded Squid, digital customer loyalty program.
Yes.
And I know myself. Even this morning, going for a coffee, I walked into a store and I seen the Squid logo, which is quite cool. But you yourself, when you walk into a coffee store and see a company that you founded and created, how does that make you feel?
It's strange. Yeah, no, it's definitely strange having it grow from, something that we were initially talking about just after college to, as you were saying, seeing it now. We're now in 1,000 locations across Ireland and the UK. And we've got one set up in Australia as well, which we're claiming. But yeah, no, so it is strange. It's strange when you walk around and when you see the thing and when you see, especially when you do see people use it kind of in the wild almost. That's always been a very strange moment being in a queue. But I also, it's the more it goes on, the more it's less to do with the, there's the team basically that puts it all there. So
yeah.
It's all the sales team and it's all the product team and that kind of thing that do put it in. So I'm aware of the fact anyway that it's not me putting it in those businesses.
No, of course. But even with, family members who send you photos and say, we're using the product and obviously it's consumer focused, that must fill you with pride.
It's got the weirdest one was when we set up in we'd set up in the UK and we went over to Wolverhampton for a team kind of a team dinner, and we went for dinner in this place, but the place used Squid. And then when we sat down, we had a couple of shareholders as well come to the dinner, and so it was a very nice moment when all of a sudden a girl from Wolverhampton, and we'd set up in Ireland, so it was a bigger deal to see people in another country use it, but gets up and she had a free voucher to redeem just while I'm behind her to go and pay. So she was able to show everyone basically that she had the thing. So that was a strange moment. But no, it's it's definitely cool seeing it around the place, I have to say.
Yeah, no, definitely creating something. But I guess in terms of, your own entrepreneurial flair, what age was it, or was there an age when, you decided or you thought, I want to be a businessman, I want to be a founder of a company?
Well, first of all, I don't know about flair, but to be honest, I didn't know what to do with myself from quite an early age. So even from school and stuff, I didn't know. Basically, when I was wrapping up in school, I didn't have a clue what to do. So there was a maths teacher in there. God help the fella. He taught me maths, physics, and applied maths. So I had him quite a lot. But basically, I was asking, "What do you think? I don't know what to do. What should I do?" Basically, and he said, "Do engineering." So I went and I did engineering. But while I was doing engineering, I still hadn't a clue what I was going to end up doing. But then while I was doing engineering, I met Katie, who co-founded Squid with me. And it was there that we kind of just started to realize that, engineering in particular kind of opened a lot of doors into there's just a lot of industries that you can go into. And then entrepreneurship kind of became a more obvious one. The more we started to do more modules, the more we started to see like, oh, this is applicable to business. That one's also applicable to business. And then in particular, we did an Erasmus to Berkeley in California. And it was while we were over there that, again, you could just see the difference in the psychology almost of the students who were in Berkeley versus the students who were in Ireland. And everyone in Berkeley was all just about startups. Everything was about startups and getting into a startup and getting into, you know, the kind of the thriving scene of Silicon Valley, I suppose. And so it was there that we kind of got into the idea of, oh, you know, this is a real thing. This is something we could do. And we were kind of thinking, is there anything big that hasn't been done yet? And that's basically where, why isn't there an app that everyone knows that puts all your loyalty cards into one place?
Yeah.
It seemed a very obvious kind of, you know, big problem that loads of customers use, loads of businesses use. So yeah, that was kind of the hatchings of the idea, I suppose.
That's it. The golden seed moment.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there's so many, you know, ideas and companies, and you think of Squid or Just Eat or Deliveroo. It's been on the tip of, you know, everyone's tongue.
Well, yeah, I think platforms definitely seem to be the kind of the way of the future of, you know, people collate lots of kind of, there's a platform for, you know, take for example, like food ordering, obviously, there's a couple of different platforms, taxis, Airbnb, etc. There's loads of really successful, even Spotify, you know, just collate and put all the music together into one place. So yeah, it was that kind of thinking that led to platform type ideas of the future. What's something that hasn't been aggregated that's big, and then loyalty cards again being a kind of a so I definitely think that is the kind of the future. Everything's moving towards mobile. It has been obviously for the past whatever it is, you know, 15, 20 years or so. But yeah, so it just kind of made sense. And then the more it made sense, the more it actually starts getting ingrained into your head, and it really starts to make sense to the point where you go, okay, we should get started on this.
Yeah, no. And then obviously it's something that keeps you up at night. But what would your advice be to, let's say, people who, you know, have that idea but they just don't know how to pull the trigger, like you and Katie did?
Yeah, I think part of it was my uncle actually was one of the guys who kind of got us going in the first place, and it was over a Christmas dinner, and he basically sort of just said, you know, you've been talking about this idea, what is it? And then I told him, you know, it's basically an app that puts all your loyalty cards into one place. And the more I started talking through it, his line was basically just do it. And then it's a really hard one to kind of come back against. It's basically like, why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
You know, at the time I was just out of college, and he was like, do you have a job? And I was like, no. Yeah, you know, well, basically, but a whole bunch of what's stopping you from doing this thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the first thing is to basically realize like what actually is your impediment to getting going.
Yeah.
And the more you think about it, the fewer things are probably in the way, or the more steps you can take basically to, if there is an impediment, whatever it might be, you can take steps to remove it. But then I think it's once you get started, and then this is the part that I love, to be honest, is just there's so many learnings.
Yeah.
So it's all the kind of, you know, if you are founding a company, you need to know about everything, basically.
Yeah.
So we started with product as the kind of an initial idea. Is we started with, you know, the product and basically building an app that would enable us to do what we wanted to do. But we weren't thinking at all about kind of sales, marketing, financing, legal, any of that stuff at all. It was just like, can we build this app and get it going?
Yeah.
Hindsight 2020 and all that sort of stuff. It would have been great to start with some of those lenses in place of basically thinking, you know, it'd be great to set up just your thinking across those kind of different pillars of a business, I suppose, and know a little bit about each before going in. So that is the value of experience, I suppose, is that you can anticipate what's going to come down the path in these different areas. So I suppose, yeah, again, the specific advice, I suppose, would be to just do it. You know, basically don't look for an excuse as to why not to do it. But be aware of the fact that there's like an incomprehensible amount of learnings that are going to come at you.
Yeah.
And that you need to be kind of open to them and be receptive to the fact that you are going to learn and constantly learn about all these different things as you go.
Yeah. And what would you say would be some of the earlier mistakes you made when finding Squid?
Yes, geez. That's probably the how many hours is this?
How long do you have?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the primary one would be probably kind of fundraising, I've got to say, because I think one of the disciplines that you get from fundraising is that it puts manners basically on the other parts, because it's very hard to fundraise if you just talk about one kind of pillar of a business. Like if you just talk about product, you're going to get a lot of questions about, well, what's the org structure going to look like? What's your kind of marketing plan? What's your sales plan? Like, do you have any IP? Do you have contracts? Do you have shareholders agreements? All this sort of other stuff. So yeah, if I was going back, I probably would have focused more on fundraising. And again, one of the big kind of learnings was just that Ireland probably still is kind of in its nascent in terms of moving into this sort of startup ecosystem. So America seems to always be a couple of steps ahead, basically. So one of the things that we probably did wrong at the beginning was a lot of priced fundraising rounds, and it was only very recently, actually like months ago, that I found out about a thing called a SAFE, or a convertible loan note. They are different, but roughly the idea that you don't actually have to put a price on it. You don't have to value a company at the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
Because how do you value a company, when it's an idea, basically, when there's no traction, when there's no sales, when there's nothing that you can put metrics on? How do you value that? And so there exists this thing called a SAFE, which is definitely what I would have used if I had my life over again, which basically is a discount on the future value of a company. So I probably would have started again, gone through the discipline of trying to fundraise, but used the SAFE note and kind of just had thought through from an earlier stage, what are the kind of steps? What's the plan here? What's the plan there? And yeah, so that as I was saying, like, again, in terms of kind of mistakes, it's a long list. But I think, that probably would have ironed out a lot of it.
Yeah, I guess, finding a company, there's obviously a lot of mistakes to learn from, but you're never going to have all the answers. So
definitely not.
Is there an element, because a lot of people, see you successfully, starting this company, finding this company, and they think, he has everything all in place, but is there an element of winging it at times where you don't have all the answers?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think part of the learnings as well has been to go from kind of winging it to more database decisions. So we're very fortunate that we have a lot of advisors, and one of the things I remember somebody saying to me was around KPIs, setting key performance indicators for your business, and to derive them basically out of assumptions. So in other words, say for example, it's sales, and we want to sell to 2,000 businesses this year. Where's that coming from, basically, if you know what I mean? And so there's an element kind of, basically that's what you want to get to. But then if you can subdivide that down basically into like market size, is that actually possible? Then if you can go, yes, it is, that makes up, let's say, 1% of the total market or something like that. Then what are the other parts that basically influence getting to 2,000 sales? It might be number of salespeople. It might be the number of sales they have to make in a given month, week, day, etc. Which you can then further break down into how many outbound activity, like how much do they need to, how much work do they need to do, I suppose, in order to achieve that. And then from that kind of macro assumption of like, we want to hit 2,000 businesses, you can start subdividing it down into kind of bite-sized chunks that are achievable, but then you also flip them into your KPIs basically for, let's say in that case, a salesperson. So you might construct it into something which says you need to do this in a given day in order for that outcome to become true.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of trial and error, basically. It's like you might say, we think that's going to happen. And then you do it. And then basically you look at the results and you say, oh, some of these assumptions were true, but that one's wildly off.
Yeah.
Why is that one wildly off? Could be something that you can address, or maybe it's something that you can't address. And so you iterate basically, and you change your KPIs, and then again it turns. So basically, yeah, you can take something which feels more big and daunting, and just break it down, I suppose, into something that you can achieve, I suppose, through putting numbers on it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think people always say, trusting your gut, but trusting the data is so important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think especially at an early stage startup as well, we have the luxury of being able to experiment. So it's exactly the right time. There's a mistake actually again that we should have done earlier, but is to experiment, is basically to say, if we want to make sales, or if we want to boost engagement in an app, or if we want to, whatever that kind of thing is we have a bunch of ideas, and when you're small, you're kind of flexible enough to trial them, basically. Yeah. So it makes complete sense that that's what you should do, is basically trial a bunch of them, and then you double down on what works. So yeah, that can go in the mistake category as well, actually. I would have done that earlier too.
Every day is a learning day. I guess, building a company, there's so many unforeseen circumstances, even disasters, but I know only a short while back Squid was taken off the App Store. And
yeah, indeed.
How did you deal with that? How did you fix that?
So that was a bit scary, all right. So this was after whatever it's called, Squid Games, and basically Google just automatically pulled Squid off the App Store, saying that we're infringing on copyright. And then we got back onto them and we said, no, we're not. And we got just kind of a series of repeated tickets coming back to us saying, your request will be dealt with within 5 business days. And we were sort of going, we don't have 5 business days. We've got an app that's basically out being used by people. So yeah, it was a complete horror show, to be honest. We'd pull a lot of kind of stops to try and get in contact with people from Google. Yeah. We even turned up physically. Tried to walk in. We tried, legal letters, all that kind of stuff. It ended up being someone who we knew in Japan. One of the guys knew somebody in Japan that actually ended up sorting the thing. But yeah, that was absolutely terrifying, because just the amount of complaints coming through on our end, basically from businesses saying, I can't get anyone to download it, where's it gone? Yeah. And us trying to explain, I know, we're trying to sort it on our side too. So yeah, that was very, very scary time altogether. But
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Obviously learnings, but something that can't really be avoided from your side, could it?
Well, that's it, I suppose. And it does, in some ways, it really, as you were saying with learnings, it just went to show how much power, I suppose, these massive companies like Apple and Google actually have, that if they were to change something, just the enormous impact that would have on a business like us, or any other app that's on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, that they can just cut it, or they can just accidentally, what happened in this case was they just accidentally removed it, and then then you're kind of at their mercy, which was a bit daunting. I
guess it's bringing it back to not always having all the answers, and as a founder you do so much, and raising funds, and obviously pitching to investors. Do you ever suffer from imposter syndrome?
No, definitely. I would say I think a lot of it almost is to do with style, I suppose. And like one of the things that I learned very early on is that I A, wasn't very good at, B, just was extremely uncomfortable doing a kind of a pre-rehearsed pitch, and that I felt much more comfortable just having a conversation with a potential investor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so as soon as that I think was the main kind of turning point for me, is anything that was kind of pre-rehearsed, or more of a performance basically.
Yeah.
Just not my style. Basically, I'm not very good at it. I'm not doesn't suit me, I suppose. So that's the main sort of version of imposter syndrome, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is trying to get into that kind of Steve Jobs mode almost, if you know what I mean, and realizing that that's certainly not me.
Yeah. No, obviously that, you don't have all the answers, but in terms of working with Katie, and obviously her being a co-founder, your students together, your friends together, do you ever see like the risk that, if Squid doesn't work out, if things don't go well, if friendship doesn't work out, like going into a partnership with a friend?
Yeah, I think part of it is just sort of setting expectations from the beginning. And I also think that there is, of course, there's a risk there. We're probably a little further on now that we kind of know that at least one of the main risks, for example, was, will we actually give it our all? And would one person work harder than the other person, that sort of thing. And I suppose me and Katie had the advantage, as you were saying, of knowing each other throughout college, and like just doing stuff like working on college projects and stuff like that together. So we have more trust, I suppose, in each other, and knowing that, okay, when we go into this, I know basically what you're better at. She knows what I'm definitely wouldn't say better at, but what I'll do. And then that we knew at least that each person was going to give it their all. So I suppose that's the main risk, is that you fall out over lack of effort almost. But I do think, that if even worst case scenario, that the whole thing came crashing down in any business, provided that you kind of gave it your all, I think you can both kind of basically that you're not going to fall out then in that case. So that was never really a concern, basically going in with Katie, because I knew her standards, her work ethic. So I personally felt very secure. Do you know what I mean? Going in with Katie, I was like, right, now we're on to something basically by having Katie on board. But Katie's always been brilliant, and I think having a co-founder as well is extremely valuable, just in terms of even the learnings that you were talking about. Having more than one person means that you can divide the learnings almost, and you can say, I'm going to focus. For example, one of the things that we do is I've focused slightly more on fundraising than Katie. So I've kind of gone off trying to learn all about that, learn about the kind of the ecosystem. Katie's focused more on product and tech, basically. So we've slightly, we cross over, but that it just helps us learn faster, I suppose, by having the work.
Yeah, of course. I guess conflict, in businesses, it's going to be inevitable, but how do you deal with it?
I think, as you were saying, it's one way is preparation. So trying to talk to people with experience, trying to understand what are the typical kind of pitfalls that you can expect. Again, I think it goes back to learnings again, but the kind of what you don't know that you don't know is extremely scary, and it happens a lot, that somebody will basically tell you this thing that you never even knew existed. So whether it's employment contracts, or whether it's stuff like, as you were saying, the Squid Game kind of fiasco, I think part of it is to do with preparation, that there's enough of a system in place that if something goes wrong, you have a couple of contingency plans. And then it's also just kind of almost like an ethos, a cultural thing, as to if something goes wrong, to have it built in, basically, that like, right, we're back in the trenches, if you know what I mean. And to get people bought into the idea that, as you were saying, things will go wrong. Like, it's a startup, it's not a well-established business where we're treading new paths, literally. So we can't anticipate what's going to happen, but we need everyone bought into reacting when it does happen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very good. And what have you learned about yourself since founding a business?
Um, yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a lot. I suppose one thing would be interests. So, there was a lot of stuff again, going right back to something like school, that I thought that I wouldn't, that I would never like, and then you're dipping your toe into all these kind of different areas of business when you're founding a startup. Um, so I suppose it's just how much I enjoy all the different kind of parts. So things like finance, fundraising, legal was always a big one. I was always terrible at English when I was in school, so in my mind I kind of wrote off anything to do with law. But all my family basically are lawyers, so that was kind of a weird one. In particular, was finding out that I actually quite enjoy anything legal related, which was that was a surprise. And then just things like marketing, anything more kind of on that sort of side, that almost the opposite end to something like engineering.
Yeah.
I was surprised by how much I like just finding out more about them. I like working in those sort of environments, and I suppose the second thing as well is just way more introverted than I thought. I was, so again, even kind of going into some of these things, it was finding out how much I kind of value just having a bit of time to myself at the end of the day. Or it's very different, I suppose, again, to things like college work, things like school work, where you're kind of sent off and you can, I don't know, you're sent, you do your homework basically, you do whatever needs to be done, and you kind of can sit down and just do it. Startups are continuously collaborative. So I suppose that kind of shocked me as well, as how draining I found, like just kind of being on the go all day with people, and that I quite liked being able to go back into something like fundraising, where I could kind of just prep documents or prep a sort of a strategy plan or something like that, but have my own time almost to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess with that side of, being an introvert at times, is it difficult to dive into leadership every morning when you wake up, going in either to the office or being in front of, tons of people and having to lead from the front?
Well, I suppose it's kind of one of those things where you'd almost, again, kind of how long, how long could we go for? But in terms of, I think it's almost to do with style, I suppose. So, I mean, I think I've always kind of thought of a business not as, like a leader and then others, if you know what I mean. But it's a collaborative thing. So I view more my job as basically trying to kind of, I suppose, myself and Katie are more in charge of paving the kind of the pathway, and then letting other people kind of work out almost. We set the framework, I suppose, as to how people can make decisions going forward. But in terms of sort of style, I try to make, definitely not going to say that I'm achieving it all the time, but trying to have the style more as a kind of something where we set, as I was saying, the framework for people to make decisions, to give them basically their own space to put their own stamp on what they're doing. So then it's more about kind of hiring the right people that fit in with the ethos, that fit in with the culture, that buy into that general kind of path that we're trying to thread, and then enabling them to basically to create their own pathway through it. Because at the end of the day, I suppose that is what we're doing. Is we've got to acknowledge the fact that this is there are patterns that we can learn from the likes of advisors, but no one's ever founded Squid before, if you know what I mean. So a lot of it is just completely new, and we've got to accept again that of all these kind of different things, they're new, they're fresh, and it's again the type of mentality that we're looking for is for people to buy into. Yeah, I'm gonna create my own path through here.
What qualities do you look for when investing in people to obviously bring along on the journey?
Again, this has been a kind of a learning curve. So initially, I think probably what I was going for was just pure raw intelligence. Whereas now it's just a blend. It's more kind of to do with one of the real things that I really like when I'm talking to someone is kind of, what's the word, like doggedness, persistence, basically, of knowing that you're talking to someone who, when something goes wrong, that there's a persistence within them that means that they basically get to the root of the problem and find an answer. It's also, I suppose, a mentality is a big kind of thing of people who understand, again, that you're coming in to create. Again, you're creating processes, you're creating just new you might be breaking into a new market, for example, and to understand that there's not an existing playbook on how to do that for Squid. There are general kind of principles that we can take and that we can frame out, but if you're going to be working in an early stage startup, you've got to accept that, as I was saying, there's basically your job is to write the rule book almost. So that's probably the main one in my mind at the minute, is looking for people who are excited by a blank canvas, basically.
Yeah.
And but also that accept that is very challenging, very, very challenging to create out of nothing, whether it's a sales process, a product roadmap, or whatever,
I guess marketing and even social media is obviously key for your business. Do you have someone who serves as a sounding board, who you can bounce ideas off?
Yeah, we started working a while back with two people. Their names are Alice Farmelo and Georgina Harding, and they've been brilliant, basically, in terms of branding, etc. So they were sort of brand consultants, and they've always been fantastic in terms of helping us. I suppose as well, one of the big things that we've learned as we go is more just getting to the root of why are you advertising. Like, if you could have 100 million people hear what you were about to say, what would you say? And so really thinking into, okay, the quality and the way in which we frame the message is so important, as opposed to purely just, spray anything basically out of these people across social media, etc.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of an experimentation thing as well. It's almost like trial and error of, you say something in a certain way, and then you read basically, how is that received? We know the core message of what we want to try and get across, but there's certain ways in phrasing, download Squid, basically. There's different ways that you can phrase that that's going to be received differently. So the likes of Alice and Georgina have been incredibly helpful for, basically, as you were saying, sounding ideas and kind of refining them, and speaking to people who are eloquent. You should definitely be having those ones.
Give me their number, send it on.
Yeah, exactly.
What does the future look like for Squid? What gets you excited?
Yeah, I suppose the main thing is that, like, the market we're in terms of customer loyalty is just sort of, it's incomprehensibly big. It applies to literally, all retail businesses. Anything that has a consumer basically is applicable to what we do.
Yeah.
Another way of phrasing loyalty is repeat business, or long-term revenue. And so I think for us at the minute, we're kind of focused on stamped cards, but what we're doing now is we're building out a product team to basically take us into these other retail verticals. So we want to get into restaurants, supermarkets, airlines, hotels, e-commerce. We want to get everywhere, basically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's just an enormous amount of kind of product that we can build, both in terms of partnering with existing brands, like things like food ordering, tipping systems, booking systems, and then payment companies too. The likes of we've talked a lot with the companies like Stripe, Visa, point of sale companies like Square, etc. So So there's a massive product roadmap for us basically to kind of to work through and get towards to get Squid as the kind of the go-to app, I suppose, the ultimate app that keeps all your loyalty cards in the one place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So world domination, basically.
That's it. One step at a time, but that's definitely the ambition. Is we're just trying to figure out now basically what is that kind of roadmap where we go from, you know, Ireland, and as I was saying, we set up in Ireland. UK is our next biggest focus, but we're testing out different kind of markets as we go. So we're poking around in the US, Canada, Australia, as we were saying earlier, and trying to work out where's the next step to go. And a lot of it is also driven by fundraising. There's only so much you can do with a certain amount of money. So it goes back to that thing of a lot of what we've been doing now is learning. And with those learnings, we can better predict what's going to happen when we fundraise. So we can basically, we can tell how much it's going to cost for us to acquire a new business in a new country, how much it's going to cost to acquire users, and to scale this to, hundreds of millions of app users, etc.
As a business leader, is there something that, you've implemented even day to day that you wish you implemented earlier on in your career?
Again, it's a long list. I suppose the thing that I struggle the most with is just organizing your day to day when you're in an early stage startup because of the opportunities. So it's very difficult, I find, to plan out your week when you've got an agenda basically for the week, but throughout that week somebody new who you never, it wasn't on your radar at all, gets onto you and says, would this be of interest, or would that be? And it definitely would, basically. And so that kind of just throws your plan at a time. So now I schedule time for planning basically in a week. And Katie's gotten me to use a couple of apps as well that kind of help just with general kind of like time management, a thing called Reclaim. Just to give it a plug. But yeah,
so no, it's helping you out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think just overall organization, I suppose.
Could you pinpoint your biggest failure? What keeps you up at night?
I suppose. Yeah, I think it was probably. Being completely honest, probably like team building and knowing basically. I think the right time when to do it. And again, it goes back to the thing of preparation. So I think in the beginning I was overly focused probably on outcomes. So you're almost hiring with a purpose in mind. So you might hire, for example, salespeople just purely driven by the fact of like, well, if we hire people to work in sales, we'll be able to achieve more sales. So obvious reason to go and hire people in sales, but there's so much kind of there's so many other things that you need to think through before hiring that I definitely wish I kind of prepped for earlier. Things like thinking about someone's career development as they progress in a company, really thinking through what their day-to-day will look like in a job that no one's ever done before, is quite challenging because you're trying to put in things like KPIs, meetings, etc. But you have no reference point. So that probably has been, I would say that's probably the worst. The thing that I should have done more is prepped basically a hell of a lot more in terms of like bringing people on. And so now I've learned that. So now, when in terms of hiring a team, it's taken a while, but we've the team we have now is, like honestly, I find it very exciting. The in terms of the caliber of people that we've brought in, etc., that's working with us. But yeah, it's definitely taken a while to kind of just learn the kind of infrastructure, I suppose, around hiring and all the different things that need to be taken into consideration. You've helped an awful lot in fairness in terms of
shameless plug.
No, but seriously, I mean, like it's been a lot of it's again just what I mean about kind of like there's so many learnings, and when you talk to people who are kind of experts in that area,
Yeah.
you learn so much and you start to kind of, you know, but yeah. So I think team obviously is kind of core to a business. And so, really understanding just that you can't put enough time, I suppose, into prepping, to take someone into the team, and you know the value that they're going to bring is you can if they're going to work across a year, and they're working whatever a 40-hour week or something, you can work out what they're going to give back in a year.
Yeah.
So if you put 40 hours into them, you're still going to get a year's whatever that is, like say 48x back on that, let's say.
Yeah.
So it just makes complete sense. Just more and more prep is definitely worth it, I think.
And you've led, you know, in a pandemic where it's a remote working culture. So has it been difficult to kind of keep that core culture while not having everyone in an office?
Yeah, definitely. Like, and probably more so than we realized until we actually got into an office. So we're now in Dogpatch Labs, and a lot of us working in Squid, it was our first job. So we had nothing again to kind of reference it against as to what it was like to work in an office, in an office environment, I suppose, when you're trying to build something. And just kind of when you actually get to know people on a personal level, you build up more layers of trust, which makes, you know, which basically just makes you more comfortable to kind of to speak up, to give your ideas, to take feedback in the right way, and to give feedback to other people, etc. So yeah, it was very challenging. I suppose the main thing that we learned when working remotely was the importance of writing everything down, because again, it's just like all these Zoom meetings, they kind of just they happen and they go past, and it becomes difficult to track what happened, what didn't happen. But yeah, trying to discipline ourselves basically into more reports as to this is happening, this is why it's happening, this is what happened in that meeting. That helped. But yeah, my God, no, being in an office, you can't. It's totally different. Way better. Way better.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge, obviously, when you're doing a remote, and body language and, you know, how comfortable people are feeling.
Exactly. No, it's yeah, but I like, as I was saying, it was really surprising to me, having not been in that kind of office environment before, as to how impactful it actually was, just in terms of, you know, bringing a real positive kind of environment, and just kind of, yeah, the output is increased. I think personally, I feel like people's kind of happiness is increased. There's every benefit basically from having the office space. So yeah.
Great. Who's your biggest inspiration, and has it changed over time?
Yeah, probably. I probably have a couple, you know, as opposed to just one. Certainly one person who's been very influential is a guy called Andrew O'Shaughnessy. So he was an advisor very early on. He was my uncle's friend, was the same uncle who basically told us to just go and do it. So he was an advisor from the beginning, and he's now invested twice into Squid. But he founded his own tech company. It's now past unicorn stage. But the main thing that I always thought about him was he's just incredibly kind of modest person. So I thought about him first and foremost throughout my life as kind of my uncle's called Stephen, so Stephen's friend, if you know what I mean. And I never thought of him as sort of, you know, Mr. CEO or whatever of this company. And then so like basically his style, the way in which he kind of enabled people in particular, I'd notice when I go into his workplace in Cork, I could kind of you can just feel when you walk in there that people are very happy to work there, that they feel like they're valued, that they're contributing to the business, etc. And And that's not easy to set up and to do. So, so basically to try and learn from him as to how do you do that? Because that's exactly what I want to do, basically, is to set up something where people feel like that, if you know what I mean. So I'd say Andrew probably is, but then, we've just been incredibly lucky as well as to, there's loads of people who've been really good to us over the years. The list is like very long, so it would take a while to get through. Okay. But yeah, no, the Irish ecosystem in general, I think is brilliant. Just there's a lot of people who are very good with their time, very just nice to small companies, very helping.
I guess working in Dogpatch Labs and, as you say, the Irish startup ecosystem, the landscape, there must be a lot of support out there.
There is, definitely. And again, it's one of the things that goes back to, as you were saying, with kind of learnings, that another bit of advice that I would have given to myself if I was starting again now is to do more research, basically, as to what is out there. Because the advantage of setting up in Ireland, I think, is that it is a small ecosystem. And, we're very lucky in the fact that a lot of major companies have their headquarters or their European headquarters here. So I typically find you're never more than one or two people away from talking to just, someone with amazing experience, like whether they're, we're again really lucky at the minute to be in this accelerator called NDRC, which is in Dogpatch, and the ecosystem that's in there is like again, I didn't expect it was going to be that kind of influential, but there's, for example, one of the guys who it goes back to again, a kind of a somebody who I think has been very helpful to us is a guy, Philip Reynolds. He was VP of engineering in Workday, and he's MD of NDRC now. But again, we're just so lucky to have people like that around the place who have kind of experience in all elements of business, who are willing to sit down with a company like ours and just teach and give their time. And so I think all in is you kind of just need to learn to ask, to network, to ask for introductions. And again, we're very fortunate, I think, to be set up in Ireland, where there is so much in such a small, condensed place, basically.
Looking back, what would you say is the most important risk you've taken and why?
Again, there's a few of them. Probably, this is kind of a niche one. So I don't know if there's, but the decision to go with the way in which we built the product. So we decided at the beginning that we weren't going to use things called QR codes, and what we were going to double down on was NFC, basically, which is tap technology. And there was a big push at the time to get QR back, basically, as the main thing. And we decided that NFC, we thought, was the future. And so that definitely was a bit of a bet as to, there's just different manners in which we could have done this. There's Bluetooth, there's NFC, there was QR codes, an array of different things, including, also credit card linking, debit card linking, that sort of stuff. And so to make Squid fundamentally based on tapping was a kind of a gamble at the beginning. I think that definitely was a risk, because it could have backfired. There could have been no adoption. But yeah, no, I'm definitely, I'm glad we made that decision back in the day.
As we come to the end of the show, we do a pass the ball or pass the torch part, where obviously it's great having someone like yourself, a highly impactful leader, on, but thank you, you're far too kind. Who would you recommend? Who would you love to hear on one of the episodes, or the next episode, if you could choose?
Yeah, again, like the problem is there's so many, particularly as we were saying at the minute when we're in NDRC, there's so many other companies around the place who are doing great things. One which would spring to mind though is a company called Ugo, which they're part of the accelerator as well. So the founder is Kate Clark, and basically what they're doing is childcare. So it's almost like a childcare platform. But yeah, I think it's fascinating basically what she's doing. I think it's something that it's so prevalent in today's kind of world, is to basically sort out childcare for busy business people. And I don't. There's me not knowing about it. I don't have kids. But yeah, I think just what she's doing and the way she's going about it, I think is really interesting. So that'll be my vote anyway.
Thanks for that. I'll let you give her a call. So
exactly, yeah.
But look, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I've gained tremendous insight and really enjoyed it. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, geez, thanks very much for having me. I hope it's not too boring. Basically, listening back to me. But
Definitely not.
No, but thanks very much. Yeah, no, appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.